Welcome back, everybody. Today's video is going to be an interesting video in which I am going to be talking about the Wilson Audio Alexandria XLF, a speaker that I have owned for about 2 months and a half, more or less, which is more or less the time that I had the magical M6 here for. And I think it's right now the right time to begin to give you things that I have discovered about this impressive speaker, massive speaker I must add, and things that maybe some of you guys may not necessarily know about such a large loudspeaker. But anyway, before I get into that, please hit that like button, subscribe. I hate to really repeat myself, but you know, guys, I have to continue to do that so that you guys don't forget to subscribe and continue to follow me. Okay. That said, as you guys know, I have been using the Wilson Audio Alexandria XLF speaker that was released in 2012, that won many awards through its time. I believe it was also discontinued in the year 2019 or 2020. Really can't remember. And it was a flagship speaker for Wilson Audio for a very long time. I have owned, if you follow my channel, 5 Wilson Audio speakers: Sasha 2s, Sasha DAW, Alexia 1, Alexia 2, Wilson Audio Alex. This makes my 6th speaker, the XLF. So I'm very clear as far as what each speaker from the Wilson Audio line gives you as you move up the ladder. But today we're going to focus on this monster 700-pound speaker that has been quite special, to say the least. And I want to just give you guys some highlights as to what the speaker does, what has impressed me about it, things that I probably didn't expect. All right, so let's get started. Number one, this is going to be with regards to the construction of the speaker. I believe the Wilson Audio Alexandria XLF looks and feels more premium than the Alex. As you can see right now on the video, it is just impressive, and I really do not know if this is due to the paint job that it has that makes it stand out so much more than the Alex I had here. But if you look at the speaker and you look at the rear of the speaker, you see this window here where you can literally take a look at the crossover section of the speaker, something that the Alex does not do, doesn't show you that. You can look at the bracing. You got the rear mounted tweeter as well. You can look at all the size of the speaker as well, which I can't really display. That camera does not do justice. If you saw the speaker in person, you would understand what I'm talking about. This is a monster of a speaker. It is like comparing a SUV to a Hummer, right? A Hummer is just bigger, it's just wider, it just commands your attention. This is what this speaker does. I remember seeing the Alexandria S2. I think it was a while back ago, and I was impressed. I never got to hear it, but I saw it in person at a local store, and I was quite impressed and mesmerized actually by the size of the speaker. It was just incredible. And I was always wondering what that speaker would sound like. Of course, now I own the XLF, and I'm clear on the tonality, the sound, the thrust, the immediacy of the speaker. Okay, so when it comes to construction, guys, there's no question about it. In my opinion, the XLF just screams more quality than the Alex. And again, this is my personal opinion. Having owned both, I believe that's just the case. The next thing I want to talk about is in regards to the efficiency of the speaker. The speaker was measured at 92.6 decibels on the stereophile review. Of course, Wilson claims 93.5 dB of efficiency. It is without a doubt a very efficient speaker, guys. It plays loud with not too much power. It really lets you hear every minute change. And I think it's due to the efficiency, by the way, because things just are more readily apparent, even at lower volume. But I must say something that is a misconception from many of you as well as myself. which is, I know we all know and agree that high efficiency speakers allow you to have more flexibility with regards to amplification because they don't really demand quite a bit of power to play loud, to give you volume, right? Remember what I'm saying here. To play loud, to give you volume. Yes, that is correct. That said, when I use small power, not very big overhead with regards to amplification, the Wilson Audio XLF becomes one-dimensional, maybe two-dimensional. What I mean by that is I feel like the sound becomes more directional, sort of like the Magnapan 20.7, where the sound really comes at you rather than surrounding you throughout, behind your head, over your head, and left to right. That's something that I found very interesting with this speaker. I never thought that would be the case, but when I bought the new models that I have here, which I haven't talked about, when I bought and I've used other amplification, powerful amplification that I haven't spoken about, I can tell you that the speaker becomes three-dimensional when you put the right juice behind it. If you're only using amplification like 30 watts, 45 watts, you'll be fine. But you're always going to think that the speaker is too big, yet the sound doesn't seem as big or in proportion to the size of the speaker. Does that make sense? It makes you feel like the speaker looks so big, but the information coming at you doesn't fill the room. That's something I found quite interesting, by the way. I don't think this was the case with the Alex, although the Alex was harder to drive. Maybe because I, quite honestly, had better electronics with the Alex, right? Which you saw all that Boulder gear, the Mephisto, all these amplifiers that I never really had with the XLF. So I really don't know if it's just a speaker that is so transparent that is telling you, hey, I'm going to play loud, but because we don't have overhead with regards to power, I'm not going to be able to fill your room because you're not giving me enough power or volume or voltage or current, whatever you want to call it. And so I think, I really, again, I do not know if this is due to the transparency of the speaker, that it's just letting me hear that I don't have enough juice for them. And that's something that I found quite interesting, by the way. This one gets loud, but not three-dimensional with very little power. So it's very, very important to make sure you have enough power for this speaker. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the bass. Before I bought the speakers, I talked to several people who are in the industry who have heard the speaker back when it was released. And after there were different changes to the line, and the Alex V and the Alex and the Alexia 2 were released, I got the feedback that the speaker, the XLF, had bass, but it was a little boomy or tubby. It wasn't as controlled. That's what I heard, right, from a lot of people. But you know me, I had to find out for myself. I had to really get out there and understand that my capabilities here and the gear that I use here are components that a lot of people never really use. Most reviewers, in my opinion, who use this level of equipment and bring this caliber of equipment, or speaker, I should say, they use what they have on hand. They place the speaker in the room, they review it, and whatever sound they get is what they get. And that's what they write on a piece of paper. Hey, no bass, less bass, not loud enough, not enough soundstage. Remember, reviewers don't fine-tune things. They have their components and they bring the speaker or preamp or amp to and accommodate it in the room, and then they give you their findings. Now that presents a problem for a speaker like this, okay? Because the XLF requires an amplifier that has a ton of damping factor control. If you're able to feed the speaker this level of amplification, you're not going to have any of this tubby bass or boominess or anything like that. Absolutely none of that in my room. Okay, so as you know, I've used Griffin successfully, and Griffin seems to be a great match to control these massive woofers, 15-inch driver on the bottom, 13-inch driver at the top. It needs the right amplifier. it really, really does need the best you can get the speaker so that the bass seems the tightest, the fastest, and the cleanest. The next thing, as you guys know, this is the first generation tweeter, okay? Soft dome tweeter. So this was Wilson's first attempt at abandoning the good old metal tweeter that they had in the past, replaced it with a soft dome. And of course, I have heard people who today claim that this tweeter is not as resolving as the new tweeter that they have put in the Alex V and other. I think it's actually the only speaker that has the new generation, 6th generation soft dome tweeter. Now, I'm going to say this, okay? The best way to do this analysis or this comparison is by having both speakers in the room at the same time. But I personally, since I can't do that right now, I can tell you that I don't necessarily find a drastic difference in terms of the quality of the tweeter by going from the Alex to the XLF. Quite frankly, I keep thinking about it and I'm like, no, this sounds the same. The tweeter is just as resolving, just as good. And mind you, that Alex had, I believe, either the 4th or the 5th generation. I want to say it was the 5th generation soft dome tweeter. This one being the 1st generation really gives me just about all the resolution I can ask for. So I am a little skeptical about some of these changes that a lot of these brands do. But again, I want to say this and I want to be clear. The best way to do this analysis is to have the other speaker right next to it and then be able to play the same material so that I can hear the differences, okay? Or could also be something else. Is it the crossover? Maybe the crossover on the XLF is far superior. It should be far superior, and that makes up for the tweeter not being as current or as new as what's found in some of the latest Wilson audio speakers. The next thing I've noticed is the scale. Guys, the scale of the speaker is enormous. Huge, tall, deep, wide. But it ties back to what I said earlier. That scale is only apparent when you have the right amplification. If you do not have the right amplification, the speaker shrinks. Does that make sense? The speaker becomes almost like the soundstage of a DAW Sasha. And that has to do 1000% with the amplification you're using. Don't assume that this speaker is going to sound big if your amplification is this tiny. It just doesn't happen. The scale only happens when, one, of course, the song you're playing is recorded with a huge soundstage, and two, if you have the amplification behind it to give you these results.